Number 19 of fiscal year 2021 to order. And I will read the governor's order, and then we can get down to business. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Westborough Advisory Finance Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Westborough's website at www.town.westborough.ma.us. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner. Watch live on youtube.com/Westborough TV or on Westborough TV Verizon Channel 28 or Charter Channel 192. Or watch a recorded version on the website westboroughTV.org under the Government tab, Meetings on Demand. No in-person attendance of, of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort is being made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means, Westborough TV. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio and video or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of the proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Any questions? Good. John Arnold.
All right. Yeah, so I have another meeting to go to, so I'm going to be leaving shortly, but I'll try to come back to the meeting if my other meeting gets done on time. But as I mentioned to the committee last time, it was my pleasure a few weekends ago to send an appointment confirmation to Zafar Siddiqui. And I wanted to take this time to introduce you to him. Hopefully sometime in the not too distant future, we can all meet him in person. But I just wanted to say welcome to the committee, Zafar. I'm sure the other 8 members and will be more than willing to help you go up the steep learning curve. And Zafar, I'll give you a couple of seconds to introduce yourself. So welcome and thank you for joining the committee.
Thank you for the introduction. So I'm Zafar Siddiqui. I met a couple of you, but would just give you a little very brief. I know we are in the meeting that I grew up in India, came to United States in 1999, about 22 years ago, and have been working at UMass Medical Center as an anesthesiologist. I have been in few executive positions. The most recent one, I was the Quality Assurance Director of the Department of Anesthesia here. I've been the president of the Junior Doctors Association in India. And so my qualifications are mostly medical anesthesia related. I had to do 3 residencies just to fit in. But I did an MBA, finished in 2011 from Eisenberg School of Management. So all that aside, the learning starts now about this process and getting involved in the town. So I was thankful to everybody for getting this opportunity to be part of the town government and in this role. And hopefully I'll learn some and contribute some in future.
Thank you, Zafar. And on behalf of all of us, welcome. And it's good to have you, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
So first order of business before we get to our guests is approval of minutes. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of meeting number 18 on March 22nd?
I make a motion to approve the minutes of meeting 18 on March 22nd.
Second?
Bradley, second.
Thank you, Andrew. Any discussion? And we'll go to a vote. Ms. Bloomberg?
Blumberg, yes.
Ms. Board?
Board abstain, I wasn't there.
Mr. Bradley?
Bradley wasn't there, but Melanie, if you read the minutes, I think you're allowed to vote. And what I saw of the minutes, I approve.
Okay. Melanie, do you want to rethink?
You know what? He hasn't convinced me. I'm just kidding.
Okay, we'll move on. Ms. Hensley.
Hensley, yes, I was there and I read them.
Mr. Ugal.
Yes.
Mr. Leslie.
Yes.
Mr. Rauch is not with us. Mr. Siddiqui.
I wasn't there. I don't think I'm.
Okay.
I did read the minutes and I did watch the whole video from the January 28 for 8.5 hours of video. I watched it between yesterday and today.
Oh, goodness. All right. We're learning something about you already.
Yeah.
Mr. Beretti, yes. Can I have an approval of a motion to approve the joint budget review meeting minutes with the Board of Selectmen on January 28th?
I move to approve the meetings of the joint budget review between the Board of Selectmen and the Advisory Finance Committee on January 8th.
Second?
Bradley, second.
Thank
Wrong
you.
date?
Was it the wrong? It's in
January.
the,
28, 2021.
Okay.
Okay, you all right, Beth?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, to a vote. Ms. Blumberg,
Blumberg, yes.
Ms. Board,
Muted.
Ms. Board,
you're muted, Melanie.
Melanie, you're muted. You're still muted. There you go. Yes or no? Yes, okay, she's shaking her head, yes. Ms. Hensley,
Hensley, yes.
Mr. Bradley,
Bradley, yes.
Mr. Ugal,
Yes.
Mr. Leslie,
Leslie, yes.
Mr. Siddiqui.
I didn't attend the meeting, but I did watch the video, so I don't know if I'm allowed to vote yes or no. But
Well,
if I'm allowed, it's yes.
you could, all right, why don't we, all right, we just leave it that way. Beretti, yes.
Did we end up with yes for,
Yeah, I think we have all affirmatives.
so it's 800? And that one?
Yes,
And I had 602 on the.
correct. Okay, we have two guests tonight. Peter Dunbeck, the chair of the Climate Action Plan Committee, and Jim Stewart, who is working with Article 13 on the EV station contract. So, gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. Peter, are you ready to begin your presentation?
Sure, I could go first, or we could have Jim go first if you want. I think his will probably be shorter, but maybe not.
Okay, why don't we do that? Jim? Jim?
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Good evening. So I was asked to join the meeting. It is actually a surprise to me. This morning I had a meeting with Chris Payant, who's my director, and said, "Why are we going to the Finance Committee tonight?" And he goes, "Well, we're not." And I go, "Well, I got an invitation. So what is it about?" So I did run into Christy today, and she told me that basically this was about the article that we're dealing with ChargePoint, who is the administrators that handle our finance part of the EV charging stations that we now have at the country club. And basically what it is when we went into this agreement with them, this was a long process. We had National Grid that had delayed the project, and to make a long story short, we finally did get the charging stations installed, and then lo and behold, we had some contract issues when the town attorney reviewed the contract from ChargePoint, stating that the town was not allowed, they wanted a 5-year commitment or a 5-year contract, and we as a town can only go into a 3-year contract. So I believe what we're looking to do now is They want to have an automatic renewal after 3 years so that we don't have to come back, every 3 years and do this basically the same thing right now. And I believe that's the way the warrant was written. Unfortunately, I did not, with a late, I wasn't aware that I was going to be presenting tonight, so I really didn't have anything to put, in front of me. I'm just going on memory here, so, bear with me. But if you have any questions, I believe that's it in a nutshell, that what we're looking to do. And if there's any other further questions you have for me, with my knowledge with ChargePoint, I'll be happy to answer them.
I'm actually a little surprised because in the correspondence we've had, we really wanted to know just the status of the contract and where the charging stations are located. Those are the questions that came up.
Okay, so yes, so the contract was signed by the town, and the charging stations are at the country club. There's 4 ports, two charging stations with 2 ports per charging station. The selectmen set the rate. We do charge, I believe it's 28 cents a kilowatt hour for charging, which we can adjust at any time. It's just right now we didn't, when this whole thing came active online, we didn't know. We wanted to make sure that the town's costs, that these things would pay for themselves. So that's the rate that was determined by some research, and Peter was involved with that. And we ended up, or the selectmen ended up setting the rate at 28 cents. The stations are live. They've gone live. They are getting used. Right now, they're pretty much paying for themselves, but that's paying for the electricity. So we're hoping that as they went live in the wintertime, the golf course was closed. We're hoping that now that spring's here, the golf course is back open, that they will be getting a lot more use and will actually pay for themselves, and then all maintenance and everything else that will come forward on the charging stations.
Any questions for Jim?
Is it, if not to get too technical, but it's a revenue sharing thing that we get a part, they get a part?
So they basically have a set fee that they charge to administrate the whole thing. They do all when the credit cards are swiped, they take all that information, they generate the funds, and then quarterly, they deposit all the funds back into an account that was set up through the treasurer and the finance department for the town. And the money is set into the town account. So basically, it does pay for itself. Plus, there was some grant money that initially was used to get this. It was a great deal for the town. Originally, when we went to do this, we could never have got these charging stations put in at a better rate than what we did. So that's why the town ended up going forward and having them put in. Peter can, I'm sure, talk about the benefits of having them in the town, and then hopefully moving forward, we'll see some more of them coming in as the town, even with our own vehicles, try to generate with, especially not so much with DPW vehicles, but with just town vehicles for the different departments tend to go, with EV vehicles. So I think that's what the whole point of this was, to get in with a great deal. We did have some delays in getting them installed. There was some upgrades that had to be done on National Grid's end, and then there was a design that had to be redesigned. So there was a delay, but eventually they are in and they are up and working. And we look forward to the benefits of the town having those the first 2 in town that the town sponsor.
He have stupid meatballs and we're trying to play a game.
Hi, a quick question. What warrant article was this previously? Like
This is Article 3, Beth.
no,
I'm sorry.
not
Article 14.
14.
Yeah, what's 13?
13, yeah.
this year, but previously, like this obviously had to come before town meeting at some point earlier. And yet I don't recall discussions about putting in charging stations. And it's unusual that it's like, I have a blank on it. So I was just wondering what previous article it came up as.
Anybody have any knowledge of that? I haven't.
I have a guess.
Go ahead.
I don't know that town meeting has to approve the expenditure of monies in a, in an internal budget or the expenditure of grants, but this is a contract approval, and I'm assuming that town meeting has to approve
The contract.
the contract change. I don't know.
The 3-year, 5-year thing is real. Like, the selectmen come before town meeting if they want extensions beyond 3 years.
It's the extension that makes it a warrant article.
Right, it was for 3 years, so it didn't have to come up, and now it's for 5, so it does.
That's right. Any other questions?
Yeah, how did the location of the golf course get selected? That was my original question.
So Beth, there was many different locations that were looked at during the process. High school, it was one of them. There was some spots in downtown that were, on the list.
I can talk a little to that if you want, Jim.
Yes, please, Peter. Yep.
So kind of our first choice was at the high school, and we thought that the high school building was used a lot for town events as well as the daily school activities. The problem was when we actually went to a contractor to look at it, the amount of trenching required to go from the power utility pole to the parking location drove the cost up too much. And so we abandoned that location. We also looked at installing it near the Forbes building parking that's in between the library and the Forbes building, as that was still under construction at the time. And we thought that both the municipal employee parking as well as the library visitors would find it a useful feature. At the time, there was this pending parking study, and there was concern about the number of parking locations for employees. So Christie was uncomfortable having dedicated EV parking spots at that location. So then we identified the golf course, and it has a couple of attractive attributes. One is people come and play golf, and they're there for about 4 hours, and a 4-hour charge is meaningful for a plug-in hybrid in many of those vehicles. There's also a restaurant there that's got people coming and going. So it seemed like it was on a high visibility street that would promote that we have an EV charging, and it's in a location where the two kind of business activities are suitable for the kind of the retail flow of EV charging.
Has it been advertised to the public that it exists yet?
Not heavily, no.
Okay.
So I will speak on that just a little bit, Beth, is that when they first went in, there was a little bit of networking issues. So one of the charging stations wasn't connecting because it works by cellular, and there was some issues with it. So we didn't want to, the town didn't want to, we figured until these things were up and running fully, start advertising to send people down where they basically they could gone down and use them for free. We did get the networking issues worked out. Both stations now are up and fully functional. I have talked to Christie about now putting it out on a social media platform as well as on the town website, that they're there, especially going into, golf season's open, the country club's open now. And just to let people know that they're actually there. And I'm also having some signs made up that will be visible from West Main Street. They'll be right there at the stations, but facing out towards West Main Street, and people will be able to see them.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Anybody else? Okay, Jim, thank you very much for coming this evening.
Great.
Peter, you're on.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, can I share my screen?
Think you can.
I need host
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm on share. Okay. I think we should be sharing now, Peter.
Well, no, you're sharing your screen. He
Ah.
needs permission to share his screen.
I need you to make me a co-host.
Oh, great. Okay.
So over in the participant list, you should click on Peter's name and have options.
All right. Hang on one sec.
Stop sharing your screen. It'll make your life easier.
Yeah.
I'm
Good.
sorry.
Okay. Peter, where are you? Now, what did you say, Beth?
He's on the participant list.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you click on his name, you should have options for what he can
Yep.
do.
Mute and more. There you go.
Oh.
No, it doesn't. Stop spotlight for everyone. Sorry about this, folks.
Okay.
Something I wasn't aware of.
Somehow you have disabled participant screen sharing. It may be in your settings. So go up to Zoom.
If you go down to the share screen, the green,
No, that
Yeah.
won't work. Go to
Yeah.
preferences.
no, you can do it there.
No, he can't because he's disabled it.
No, I don't know. It's
Go
showing.
to preferences. Under Zoom.
Okay, here we go.
Yes.
Multiple participants can share simultaneously.
That's the
Yeah,
one.
that's what you want to allow.
Okay.
Yeah, that's down at share screen.
All right. Here we go. Okay, so Peter, let's see.
You're up and running. We're good.
Okay, good.
So let me get this going. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. Just an introduction for those who don't know, I'm Peter Dunbeck. I'm the Chair of Sustainable Westborough, but I'm here on behalf of the Climate Action Plan Task Force, which was a separate committee formed as a result of a town meeting vote. And we've been operational for about a year. Our goal was to address the causes of climate change and do it in a way that's consistent with our statewide goals. And at this time, the state has set the goal of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. As we'll talk about as the plan goes through, there's a lot of other goals and activities that the state has set, but those are the overarching goals. We have drafted a complete draft of the plan that's been distributed, and we're in a kind of an open public comments period, and we'll be returning to the Board of Selectmen in early April, a couple weeks from now, looking for approval of the final draft of the plan. The task force was a group of 11 members. Dave McMahon had to drop out for some business reasons. It was really a very good group to work with, a lot of bright people, different perspectives, both direct town staff and direct roles, as you see on the left side, as well as at-large members from around the community. The plan has been built very much aligned with what's going on at the state level. And at the state level, there's three things that I'll talk about. The one that's shown here is a roadmap, which is how to get to 2050, to the net zero 2050. And there were various analysis of the science and the economics and the available technology, justice impacts, how it impacts different communities. In the overwhelming majority of the opportunity for greenhouse gas reductions, the overwhelming majority of where the greenhouse gases are in building heating and hot water heating, building use, transportation use, how we move our cars and trucks and trains and everything else, as well as the energy supply. So the fundamentals of how Massachusetts and how Westborough is going to get to net zero in 2050 is by cleaning our electricity supply so that it's carbon-free, and electrifying our buildings and our transportation systems to a degree that the balance of any carbon emissions can be sequestered through land use management practices. And so we, as a task force, as the Westborough Task Force, didn't try to reproduce this analysis. We are basically just leveraging the work that was done at the state level. In addition, the state has a series of programs in regard to rebates and incentives and training materials and so forth that are aligned to these goals. And so we are positioning ourselves to take advantage of that work. Our work was started again about a year ago. We looked at what other towns had done, developed what we thought were the best practices from across different communities that had done work in this space, and also reviewed the state programs, as I've just said. We identified from that 4 primary goals. Again, they're very much aligned with the state goals: clean electricity, building and transportation electrification, and foundational to the building electrification is getting greater efficiency out of our buildings, both in how they're built and how they're operated. There are other goals that we've identified that are important. They don't generate as much direct greenhouse gas emissions, but they're important environmental issues, or they're supportive of the primary goals that are mentioned above. And we do highly recommend that the town pursue all of these. As an example of kind of quantifying those goals, we are setting a target of 20% of the registered vehicles in Westborough to be electric vehicles by 2030. And a statewide mandate has been defined by the Commonwealth that all new cars and trucks sold after 2035 must be EVs. It'll be no longer possible to buy gasoline and diesel vehicles in the light duty category after that date. The state is also driving building heating into electric heat pumps as the primary source of heating, and has set the goal of 25% of households using electric heat pumps as the primary source of heating by 2030. And as stated earlier, all of this electricity needs to be clean electricity. So there's a big push for offshore wind and other renewable sources. And Westborough will, we believe we can reduce our emissions in the electric sector by half by 2030. So as I started with talking about net zero in 2050, one thing I skipped over is our plan is very much focused on what we can do in the next 5 to 10 years and how do we get to 2030. Any plan we put in place that was had a 30-year horizon would be kind of wishful thinking at best. So the most tangible things we can do are in the next 10 years. And they're also the most important. We need to get the greenhouse gases out of the atmosphere as quickly as possible because they're warming the planet already today. So with these changes, and again, the numbers shown here, 50% in electricity and so forth, are the state goals, which Westborough is adopting. We believe we can get a 38% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions from our baseline year, which is 2017, to the end of the decade in 2030. As stated earlier, the key focus areas is in electrification of our transportation, electrification of our building, and shifting to clean, renewable sources of electricity. Critical success factor in executing this plan is that understanding that this change is going to impact everybody in the community And really, it's going to impact everybody differently, depending on the type of house you have, or whether you rent or buy, you own your home or you're renting, the age of the home, your age, how long you plan to be there. Everybody's going to be impacted differently. So it's really important that we understand that and we appreciate those differences and provide people timely information for making the best decisions. The most effective time to make these transitions to these new technologies like heat pumps is when the furnace has failed and it's time to replace it. You don't want to have a program that's trying to drive people to take a furnace out of commission that's working fine today. So you want to capture the replacement cycles. So you need information in people's hand. You need them to be educated and knowledgeable about the new technology before their furnace fails in the middle of February. So our program is around getting the best information we have in regard to state incentives, whatever regulatory changes. There's going to be various programs of capping fossil fuels in different segments. Those changes are going to drive cost factors in the use of fossil fuels, getting that information and providing it to residents so that they're informed when they make their decisions at the time of replacement. The governance, one of the things we learned when we looked at the other communities and their plans was that some communities put together pretty good plans, but then they basically sat on the shelf. There wasn't a good follow-up implementation governance process. And so one of the things we've talked about from the very beginning is to make sure that we don't do that. So we're recommending that the town have a focal point and we're calling it a sustainability coordinator. Other towns use that name, or sustainability director or energy director, and they have different names. But a single focal point to manage the activities within the town government and to be the single point of contact for the community. Sustainable Westborough, I think, is going to play a key role here as we go forward. I think it's going to be a new roles for Sustainable Westborough. It's going to be challenging. There's going to be a lot of change. But it's also going to be change for other boards and committees that need to include climate-based decisions in their normal course of activities and how they make decisions. And we should leverage the other community organizations like Rotary Club and WCLT, Civic Club. There's great organizations that care about these issues, and I think we can take advantage of the good community we're in, the great community we're in, and these people who will, I believe, respond with a little bit of leadership. So our plan for closure here is to begin discussions with the town staff, which is already underway, and Sustainable Westborough in regard to the climate implementation plans. Collect review from boards like yourselves, get feedback from the community and really beyond. I've sent this out to about 10 or 15 other communities who have climate teams, and I'm starting to get some feedback, very positive feedback, and consolidate that into an updated plan, which we'll be presenting to the Board of Selectmen on their April 13th meeting. In addition, some of you may have noticed that on Friday last week, the governor signed a new Climate Roadmap Act, which changed some of the statewide goals. In my opinion, it moved very much in the right direction. It's very positive change, but it is change. So we're trying to accommodate that in our updated revision. And we're going to put together a publication version of the document and release the plan for the board approval on April 13th. It is a dynamic environment. As you know, the new bill came out on Friday and got signed. So it's not the last one. There's going to be continuing changes. There's going to be technology breakthroughs. There's going to be programs that we thought would be beneficial that are going to fall apart and not work. We're going to need to be dynamic in this, and the plan needs to be updated and flexible. So we're calling it the publication version, but we expect it to be updated and reviewed continuously over time. So one of the things that Michael had asked for is to make sure I brought out the impact on town finances. These are my thoughts, but I'd be happy to discuss any of this with you further. So the first thing is the approval of the climate action plan has no direct expense. The entire plan is non-binding. There will be staff time entailed, used for planning and implementation. But I don't think that's material, but we can talk about it if you want. Each of the implementation strategies that are outlined will have associated direct and indirect costs and benefits. But the project teams need to kind of go through the specifics of the plan, the details, the timing, and generate the proposals that would go through the normal channels for approval of either capital or expense spending to justify those spending items. The one that I want to highlight is that the task force is recommending hiring a sustainability coordinator. As stated earlier, I think that town will need a focal point within the town government. It's become pretty common practice among many municipalities that have similar goals as this plan. And in other towns, there's a history of these positions generating either grant money or energy savings that pay for the position 8 to 10 times over, 8 to 12 times over. I think it would be prudent to probably start out part-time and could be very well shared with some of the neighboring communities if there's an interest in sharing a resource, as we've done with some other positions. The plan we've discussed with Christy and her staff is to start up with the current staff. Obviously, this position isn't going to be filled immediately. I think we can get started. We can learn more about what implementation is going to look like, come up with a better job description. I'm anticipating we'll have a proposal to hire as soon as the fall town meeting, but that's not being proposed at this time. So that is what I prepared for discussion. I'll stop sharing so I can see everybody's faces, but I can go back to sharing if we need to refer to the slides.
So any questions for Peter? Paul?
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Peter. I've been interested watching this. I mean, this plan is amazing, the detail and the comprehensiveness of it and all that. The work that you guys have put in, I know over the years, and I've been watching as you've been presenting over the years to boards as it got to this point. And I'm always a little skeptical, and I was a little skeptical that the downsides weren't being talked about enough. I found that that's evolving, and you've approached some of them today, or the potential downsides, I guess, which might be people who have just invested. I think you even said at another meeting that you yourself have, invested in energy efficient boilers or furnaces recently with gas or oil, or whatever, and
gas, yeah,
don't want to lose. And I've done the same, and don't want to lose that investment, but I think that's been addressed pretty well lately with the planning board and other places. So it sort of convinced me that the long term that there's a lot of thought has gone into this. I had one question that, so with furnaces heading toward and cars heading towards electric, I understand that's more efficient, and especially if it's sustainable production. But it also makes us very dependent on one infrastructure. So I'm thinking you guys have maybe thought about this a lot, that, now if our electricity goes out, we may still have our gas, or we might have a power generator that might be outlawed at some point, because I know those are about the least efficient motors there are. So I'm just wondering if being totally dependent on one, infrastructure, one system, how is the state or how are we, is a lot of thought being given to that?
It's a topic that gets a lot of discussion in the task force. One of the members of our task force is a career National Grid executive and had connections in the industry and with ISO New England and so forth. So I think we had expertise in that space. I'd say more than mine for sure. I'm also an engineer, so I know every system can fail, and you can design in redundancy, and you can still have failures and so forth. So I have an appreciation of the question. I think, the heating system I have in this house, which is natural gas, if we lose power, we lose our heat because all the pumps and fans and everything work with electricity. So it's not dissimilar to what we have today. I think you can contemplate having generators which have fossil fuel, or you could have a generator that, or the equivalent of a generator, which would be, let's say, a Tesla battery that would run your house for 24 hours or 48 hours using batteries. So I think there are things that could be done. The network itself is designed to be resilient, and they still fail, but your local home can have some resiliency like a generator or a battery system. I think it's going to be an evolving thing. Some things will work better than others, and they'll have to be fixed, and new technology will have to be brought to bear.
Walter?
Thank you. Pete, great stuff to report. I agree. It looks like you guys did a lot of work, and that report looks very thoroughly researched and thought out. One question I would like is if you could send the slide deck that you're using so I can include that into our public record. That's sort of a housekeeping thing. But second question I have is on, I'm curious with solar cells, which have great advantages towards clean, about the issue potentially, 20 years after they're done, what do we do with them? I mean, there's a potential waste issue of a lot of old cells coming up in about 20 years or something as well.
Yep.
I'm not up to date with that stuff, so I'm just curious whether that's part of the thinking moving forward, or more.
So there are questions like that are beyond the municipal level questions. They're like broad societal questions of, are these technologies good for the environment through their entire life cycle, from mining of cobalt to disposal of the solar cells? Those are all valid questions which we all should be asking and pushing for strong answers. At the Westborough level, we're going for the ride. We can't go to Africa and make sure that our cobalt's coming from safe mines, but we can advocate for that in our politics, and we can, and if opportunity presents to, it's like, what's the coffee where you get the safe coffee that's not been, fair trade. Thank you. I mean, there could be some labeling and stuff that develops over time. There could be things like that happen. I think we should be demanding it as consumers. The Westborough Task Force is not trying to, directly influence that at this time.
Sure. So at the Westborough level, I think I really like what I heard where you're focused on sort of the next 5 to 10 years because, like you said, we don't know what's happening further down. And I think the goals for 2030 seem somewhat like something you could hit with effort versus the 2050 goal just seems like a really high bar until you get started. So I just think I applaud that approach and keeping the plan flexible.
Beth?
Yeah, hi. I have two questions. One, and I don't know, are hybrid vehicles like the Prius considered part of the electrical vehicle, or are they still bad on the gas consumption? Like, where do they fit? Because I thought of electrical vehicles, at the more extreme of the Teslas and Volts that were fully electric.
Good question. And I think it's, I consider hybrids a transitional technology, which is valuable at this time. But to get to the net zero in 2050, you can't have the gasoline engine and the hybrid battery. It's too much fossil fuel. So you need to go to a full battery electric vehicle. So the state goals are in fact battery electric, 100% battery. And but at this time, I think hybrids, particularly the plug-in hybrids that you can get fully electric for 50 miles or whatever it is they have for a range, I think they're very attractive options.
All right, so that was one of my questions. Thank you. And the other question had to do with, are we bringing the HVAC type people on board? Because I know that when I had to replace a furnace maybe 2-3 years ago, trying to look for energy efficient options, I felt very stymied at the level of hitting my plumber. When I was asking questions, they wanted to sell me what they've always sold me. And do you have any education out there for the local plumbers to bring them on board to sell us better products?
That's a very important question and a good insight. I went through the same thing. I was repairing my air conditioner and it was going to be, so many dollars, $1,000 or something. And it's like, gee, should I just throw it away and get a heat pump? I could get the air conditioner and and I asked him and he made, a dismissive comment, and it was clear that it wasn't in his sweet spot of what he was used to selling. So I think, yes, we need to do that. I think it is again, a municipality doesn't have the staff skill to go train HVAC contractors. We're going to need to leverage places like the Mass CEC, the Clean Energy Center, and other agencies that are state agencies that do have programs for that. We're also working with a group of 10 Metro West. I call them Metro West. They're from Arlington to Westborough. We're the farthest west, but there's 10 towns that are working together to put together programs and best practices. And one of the things we're doing is a development of basically an RFP that allows communities to define how we can come up with a list of certified HVAC contractors that are aligned with the goals that we put into our plan. And then we can refer our residents to those people because they've gone through an official procurement process. So there's a group that's working with MAPC, if you know MAPC.
No.
Metropolitan Area Planning Council. It's the Boston version of CMRPC, if you know CMRPC anyway. CMRPC is the Worcester area one, Boston area is MAPC. So we're working with the MAPC group to get kind of the lawyers involved, make sure we do it all legally, and we get the leverage of these 10 communities so we get some scale and come up with a list of certified vendors that we can all refer to, that we know, they know how heat pumps work and they know
that they can give our consumers options.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Because that seems like that was such a stumbling block.
Yep.
Um,
But,
Jody?
you know, the things I say, like this is like a 2-year effort to try to submit RFPs, get vendors back. Some of them aren't going to work out. Before it's actually operational, it's going to be some time. So I don't want to overset expectations. But that is needed. But the question you're asking about is needed.
Thank you, Peter. Jody, and then Melanie, and then folks, just in the interest of time, I'm going to probably wrap that up if that's okay. So
I
Jody,
think, sure. I think Mr. Bradley had his hand up before I did, so I will defer to him in the
Andrew,
interest
I'm
of time.
sorry. I
Thank you.
apologize.
Not at all. I appreciate that. So I've heard in the presentation a lot of conversations about how the town needs to be ready from the point of view of, you know, where there may be costs in terms of what we're going to be doing internally. But I didn't hear, and I apologize if I missed it, I didn't hear the opportunity of perhaps setting up a fund that could be modestly funded starting sooner than later, $15,000, $20,000 a year, that we would be able to use to help subsidize either low-income or moderate-income people as they transition to alternative heat sources, or even small businesses as they do the same, where we could offset, say, $500 of the cost of a system. I know I just had a $4,500 heat pump put in my house, and $500 is a meaningful impact. And to do that, we could turn over 30, 40, 50 different units a year, you know, looking at it more comprehensively and with different scaling, people who could afford it more. Is that part of the thinking as well? Is that something we could start jumping on now?
That idea is in the master plan, and there's a climate and sustainability working group in the master plan, and it includes I forgot what it's called, but a revolving green fund, basically of that would get filled through town allocation. Again, that's not approved. It's just a master plan action item.
Thank you.
Jody?
Sure. My question is, I'm curious about the bill that was finally signed into law by Governor Baker on Friday, the 2021 Climate Action Roadmap Act. I'm wondering, in your roadmap, Peter, were you anticipating some of the things that would be coming law when that legislation passed, or does that new law change a little bit what you have to be planning for at the local level based on what was passed at the state level?
It was definitely anticipated. One of the benefits of COVID, which there aren't many, is that all of the state meetings were opened up to Zoom, and I could log into all the state meetings, so I could kind of track the implementation advisory committee and all these committees as that bill was moving forward. So we were pretty in tune with what was coming. The main thing that the new bill did was it accelerated the transition rate. It didn't change the direction of, gee, we hadn't thought about this and now we're making this mandatory. It's just go faster. And so they're putting into law how fast the state has to go through the transition. 50% reduction by 2030 instead of 45%, 75% reduction by 2040 instead of 65%. Wow. The other thing that it did, which I think speaks to, I'm sorry, the person who, Bradley?
Yes, Andrew Bradley.
Andrew Bradley.
Yep.
One who's on the phone, whose name doesn't show up. The other thing the state law implemented was it put into Mass General Law the concept of environmental justice and mandated how environmental justice must be implemented through a broad spectrum of decision processes to ensure that we don't leave portions of our communities behind as we're doing this transition. So it was one of the biggest elements of the new climate bill was the justice part of it. When I send the presentation to Walter, I could also send a link to an article that summarizes the climate bill at a level.
Great.
You know, it's kind of a newspaper article level, so it's easy enough to read.
Great, thank you.
Melanie?
Yes, we did anticipate it.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And part of mine got answered because I wanted to know about affordable housing and if we were working in conjunction. But the second piece I have is when we have new businesses coming into this community, have we tried to engage them in something that would benefit us, like with regard to wind energy, and they have a role in putting something up on their property that kind of offsets power usage? Do you know what I'm saying?
Let me answer in a more general way.
Okay.
I think I'm an advocate that we should be engaging in our new business engagement process in this discussion. I also think that a lot of companies are already sensitive to it and would be welcome to having that discussion. Olympus Medical new building that went up is a LEED Platinum building. It's a very, very high efficiency building. And I'm sure the Amazon, who has corporate-wide goals on emissions. So our two biggest new employers are going to do a very good job on this issue without any of our help, just due to economics and their own corporate intent. In regard to wind, I think wind in an environment, a community of our density is probably not a good option. Windmills have noise and other interferences and stuff that are in a higher density area don't work as well. I think they work offshore. I think they work out in the Midwest in the farmland and stuff. Solar, on the other hand, I think we should be looking for putting solar on all the municipal roofs. I think all of these big flat roofs in our commercial areas should be explored for solar build out. So I think there's opportunities for that. I think there's things we could do in our zoning and to encourage that, potentially even some, and this goes back to kind of more the state level, that building codes could potentially say, define what a solar requirement is in new building construction, and we could then adopt it. But building codes are done at the state level. We could do things with zoning.
Thank you. Peter, a comment, observation, and then a question. Comment is, we do things at the municipal level that eventually are going to impact everybody in this town on an individual basis. So I hope at some point your group can boil down all of this information to what it means for the individual, in whether homeowner, business person, or even a rentor who is going to get costs passed along. The observation is, I think you guys have really rolled out a very ambitious plan. I'm in favor of it. It's right now a macro level plan, and I'm hoping as time goes on that we see a little bit more of a micro level aspect to it. And my question to you is, what would you like the Advisory Finance Committee to do as a result of your presentation? What action would you like?
I guess I'd put it in two buckets. One is indication to the Board of Selectmen of your sentiment, which, because there isn't a direct finance, maybe that's not a vote that you need to take because there's no approval of budget or whatever. But if after your review you feel that it's a good thing for the town to have this, with your understanding of the environmental issues and the town's needs and stuff, you give it a kind of a soft vote of yes, whatever that means, or some other declarative statement. So that's one short-term thing. The other is you have a mission of this organization and over time, and how how can this organization help make better decisions in the future? Some organizations, corporate organizations, have introduced things like the social cost of carbon in their pricing, in their decisions. So do you think Westborough, this is a rhetorical question, do you think Westborough should have some sort of a pricing mechanism that you consider in your financial analysis? You got plan A and plan B. This one has a higher carbon footprint. This one has a lower cost. How much lower, how much benefit? How do you make that decision? How do we collectively, Westborough, make that decision? So as the finance advisory group, could you take that on over the next year or two to come up with a method of helping to make that decision for the town?
Well, you've given us an awful lot to think about, including your final words. I'd like to give the committee a week or two to think through what they've seen, digest the information, and then we'll take it up either at our meeting of April 5th or on April 12th, which is just before you go to the selectmen.
Yeah.
Michael,
Yes, Jody.
I see Zafar's hand up, and I don't know if you've seen that
No,
on
I
your
can't. I'm
on your
sorry.
screen.
No, I
Okay.
don't.
Okay.
Zafar, I apologize to you. Do you have a comment?
You have to turn your audio on. Yep. One more time. Yep.
Okay, so just a quick suggestion. I work sometimes at the Henry Haywood Hospital, and they have done a wonderful thing. They have made all their parking lots covered with the solar panels on their roof. It's a huge parking lot and would generate a lot of things. Simple to manage. I know we just mentioned about all the Westborough building might have in the due time some panels on the roofs of the town buildings as well. I saw the same I think in Hopkinton or Upton High School. They have their parking lot covered with the solar panels on top of the roof of the parking lot.
Yeah, I think there's opportunity there, and it can be done just with a real estate lease, where you can lease that space to some developer. They do all the capitalization of the entire thing, and you get an annual lease payment for leasing out that space.
Peter, thank you very much for spending time with us tonight. I know we went over, but it was well worth it.
I appreciate your indulgence on the extra time and look forward to working together.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, folks, moving on. We had some issues come up, some questions come up on some of the articles last week, and I know some of you followed up. So I'm just going to go in the sequence of the articles and try to get some information back to you. I know, let me just start with article number 3. I did have a meeting with Christy today, and we spoke about several articles, and you asked me to go back to her with respect to recurring articles. First of all, she advised that the version 7 of the articles, which should be, fingers crossed, the last version, will be out to us by the end of the week. There are 2 changes of note. One is that the article on the gym partition will have a reduced cost from $297,000 down to $245,000. And the second is that the Sandra Pond stocking article will actually have a request for an increase from $4,000 to $8,000. And the sprinkler article is going to be rewritten to make it much more clear, to give more clarity to the issue of free cash. So we should anticipate those at the end of the week. As far as Hang on one second. Okay. As far as the annual occurrence of the reimbursement for tuition is concerned, it used to be, according to Christie, it used to be something we dealt with in the budget every year, as we all, I think some of us recall. The problem was it was becoming very inefficient. People would project that they were going to school and anticipated a cost, and that for some reason wouldn't go. And at the end of the year, they would have a surplus. So they decided to go to an article versus budget, so they have an exact cost that they can put in front of the town meeting. Okay. Any questions about that? Okay. There was a question that came up, and John Arnold spoke about last week, and that is, when are funds available after the town meeting? If it is a free cash item, the funds are available immediately after the clerk certifies the votes on the articles. So that money can be spent after May 15th, after that certification. With respect to borrowing and appropriation, that money cannot be spent until after July 1st. So any raise and appropriate, any borrowing, even if approved, cannot be spent until after the 1st of July. Okay? Does that bring clarity for people? I think it does.
Very helpful.
Helpful, yeah.
Does it stand, sorry, Michael, does it stand that they can contract or start the process, just not spend the money? That was said last time.
With respect to what?
For the borrow and RNA, it can't be spent after July 1st, but last meeting they said they could start to work on it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, they could work. Yeah, absolutely. And any other concerns about that article? Okay, Paul, you had conversations with the folks over who were handling the Lake Chauncey. Could you fill us in on that? These are Articles 5 and 6.
Yeah, so for the study, the background is that at the joint meeting that we went to, that's where Jordan McCarran, the conservation director or officer, presented, a little bit about the article, and it was kind of brought up at that point that the state owns most of the surrounding land, and had they been engaged, and they hadn't. So that was my question last time, was there any progress on that? So I asked Jordan, and he answered that he did reach out to the Mass Division of Fisheries and Wildlife, which has that land, the Central District Supervisor, and the state, and according to him, the state has no program like that. There's nothing that exists. He was going to run it up the chain, but it didn't sound encouraging to me the way it was positioned as, there's no program for that. He also said that Christie had drafted a letter to the, or an email or something to the legislative delegation to see if there was something at a different level or a different pocket or something, and he didn't know the status of that. I didn't pursue that because that sounds like a long-term thing, and it's probably part of other issues that are raised at that level. And I didn't, given like the reaction, everybody's, both the school and the town working with COVID and everything, I didn't see a lot of expectation that there was anything yet, but she is pursuing that. So that there's always hope, I guess. What I didn't ask about, because at that joint meeting, it also came up about asking Pulte to get involved with obvious benefits to them. I guess I leave that in the same category as that sounds very doubtful to me. So I don't know that we need to have that answer before we would move ahead, but that's an avenue that they can continue to pursue. So
do you think we'll have a little more clarification on this article as before the town meeting, or is?
No, I don't think so. I think that's as far as it's going to go. And I don't know that getting Jordan to come in front of us would get us any more information than that. So I think that's about it. But I know, given that, we've been asking about this, if something changes, I'm sure he'll reach out right away and tell us.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Any questions for Paul? Okay. So you asked me to speak with Christie about Article 7, capital equipment. And Andrew, I don't know if you got my email from a week ago about the voting.
I did. I haven't been able to dig it up yet. I'm sorry. I'll make sure I look for it after the meeting this evening.
Okay, thank you.
My apologies.
Yeah, no problem. So Christie said she was confident that we would. The question from Hank was, would we have draft motions, or at least the idea of the funding sources on the capital equipment prior to our vote on April 29th? And Christie has assured me that we should have, Christie assured me we shall have all of those motions before the 29th. Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah. With respect to rescinding the overlay surplus, the question was what happens, of course, when we rescind overlay surplus. Under normal circumstances, it would get swept into free cash at the end of the fiscal year. As I said earlier, they're going to reword the entire article, or not the entire, they're going to reword the article on the sprinkler system to make it more clear with respect to the use of free cash, along with the previously approved surplus. Now, she was very clear the fact that, and I agree with her, that rescinding the article or rescinding the previous article and using that money in conjunction with some free cash is not overstepping the policy that was established by the Board of Selectmen with respect to projects standing on their own merit. And you recall from last year all that went on at the town meeting about that. So at this stage, we have prior approval from prior town meetings for $760,000, and they're going to add in $171,000 to bring it up to the $930,000 cost of the sprinkler system. It will obviate the need for us to borrow the $1.5 million. And so that's what we're going to see when they reword that article. And that's the plan. Was that clear to everybody, or was I clear about?
It's the answer that you received was clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
My explanation may not have been.
No, I just recollect it in a slightly different way. And, but I trust they're doing this in a fiduciary or a fiscally sound manner. I thought that, the sprinkler system, I guess, was something different than another article at that building. I accept that. I think that sounds good. The work has to be done. They're finding a good way to get it done.
Yeah, and it doesn't disrupt the way we borrow our debt policy. So I think it's in listening to her explanation, I thought it was I thought it was very realistic and very practical the way they're doing it.
Yep. Thank you.
John, I'm sorry, Jody, did you have something else?
Not on that one.
Okay.
If I can skip back though, I don't know if this is okay. You said that you would have the final motions on Thursday, the 29th of April.
No. The final vote is, I'm thinking, is
about for us.
For us.
Maybe I'm jumping ahead. When are we going to have Leah's financial statements showing us the bottom line impact based on the funding sources?
Well, I think we're going to see that. I've invited them for April 22nd.
Okay,
Okay?
great,
And I'll
got
go-
it.
I'll go
Okay.
into that. Okay. So John Arnold was going to get some clarification regarding the town seal, and he had to leave us early tonight, so we'll pick it up. That was Article 16. Article 17 was the Disability Commission, and Hank had a couple of questions about that. But let me give you this. He asked about the mission, and she said that the mission of the Disability Commission was to advise the ADA coordinator. And by appointing a commission, we also get, and I'm going to put this in air quotes, points at the state level with respect to grant eligibility. So there is that benefit to appointing the commission. And the community development director will still serve as the ADA coordinator in the town. Okay. Any other questions on that? Boy, it looks like I'm on tonight. Article 19, 20, and 21 with respect to the board of, changing the Board of Selectmen to the Select Board. Any cost implications are very minor. Stationery printing, business cards, nothing of any material nature as far as we should be concerned. There was a question about markup of the bylaws, and that's being done, and the town clerk has that. There was some concern in the sequence of the taking up of these three articles, 19, 20, and 21, before a couple of more articles that mention specifically Board of Selectmen. And Christie didn't see that as an issue. She thinks that will be taken care of before these things come up. And finally, just so we know, the charter change, the change to Westborough's charter with all of this Board of Selectmen to Select Board has to go to the state legislature, and the zoning and general bylaw changes have to go to the Attorney General. Okay. Article number 26, which is the poultry regulations. I asked Beth to reach out to our animal control officer, and she has done so and invited the animal control officer to be at our meeting next Monday, April 5th, to talk us through this article. There is one caveat, and that is that she's subject to being on call for emergencies, and she's plugged us into her calendar. And if she can, hopefully she'll be here without any emergent issues being dealt with. Beth, do you want to just fill us in on the rest of that?
Yeah, she'd love any questions that you have in advance, just so she can prepare better.
Okay. So between now and next Monday, if you have any questions about that article, Beth, would you like to be the recipient of those questions? Sure. And you could forward?
Yeah, I will forward them.
Just forward them to Beth then, okay? All right. Any other questions about any articles right now? Okay, good. So I'd like to move on to the proposed work plan. The reason I did this was just to try to give the committee some clarity about what we have going forward, but also so that we could adjust our personal schedules if necessary to make sure that we're here. As I said in my email, it is clearly open to amendment. Proposal is, the byword here. So any questions about what we have here? I did plug in the final review of the school budget on April 19th. And then, as you see, as I said before, April 22nd would be when Christie and Leah would meet with us about the town budget. So I would appreciate it if anybody sees anything in here that they'd like to adjust or think needs to be changed for efficiency or timing reasons. Please don't hesitate to let me know. Okay. Anything?
So, well, I have a question as I look. Thank you, by the way, for doing this. This is super helpful for just getting organized and planning time. So Monday, there's no meeting on Thursday.
No.
A week from today, we could hear from the animal control officer. We should get questions going forward.
Yep.
Probably not a meeting on Thursday unless needed. When you go to Monday and say budget adjustments, does that mean we'll go through the list of changes to the budget that we got 2 meetings ago?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, then
There's
that's
nothing. I didn't see anything significant in those changes.
okay.
But it's appropriate for us to go through them. And I wanted to have any questions that might come up early enough so we could feed them back to Leah or Christie to get their answers to.
Okay.
Okay.
And just one other nudgy note, and it's when I was following the new, and this, Paul, for you, the worksheet, which I also appreciate, the article worksheet. Something happened down with Article 13 and 14. And so it's, when you look in that column in the spreadsheet, 14 should be the extended contract for EV chargers. And 15 is the acceptance of easements for West Park. So something happened with the title of the articles in somewhere on 12, 13, 14. And then it's back to correct on 15. 15 is the acceptance of the easements. So I think it's just one of the titles of one of the articles must be in the wrong line.
There's 2 acceptance of easements, 14
Right,
and 15.
So there should only be one. And I think the EV charge should be 14 and the acceptance of easements should be 15.
There are 2 easements, but I'll figure that out I'll compare it to the warrant and get it right. And I'll do that when we get, at the same time I make the changes from the 7th version or 8th version when we get it later.
Yeah, that sounds great. I noticed when we go down 17 now, and this version is not quite lined up yet either. But yeah, the next version is a good time to do that. Thank you.
All right, I'll fix all that. Thank you.
Okay.
Looks right to me.
Anything else? Okay, then I'm going to assume we go forward with this plan, but we are flexible enough to make changes if necessary.
Great.
Okay, so again, no meeting on Thursday. The next meeting is Monday, April 5th.
Michael, I did have a question, a follow-up on Jody's question on the budget adjustments for the 12. So what I think we've seen so far is a sheet that showed all those adjustments only, but not the budget, the final budget, or will we get that, I guess, if you know?
I could send it out again. There's a summary sheet, right, and then the details of each of the items in the summary sheet.
Okay, but I thought it was only those pages, not the bottom line, for example.
No, we're not seeing that yet. And I guess as we get closer to April 22nd, we'll see that.
Right, yeah, that'd be good to have.
Yeah,
well, it'd be good to have on that 12th meeting, I guess, but if not, it's whatever it's available.
Okay, let me see what they can do. There's a lot of moving parts right now on things, so I'll speak with Christie again and see when the earliest time she can get that to us is.
Thanks.
Anything else, folks? Okay. Is there a need to have future draft agendas tonight?
Your work plan kind of creates a future draft agenda.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So next week we know what we're doing. We'll continue the article review, animal control, and any other liaison follow-ups that might come up Are there any liaison reports? And I'm going to jump in here for a second. Beth, I'm going to ask you, with respect to the school committee,
Yeah.
you were kind enough to send out a number of questions to them a few weeks ago. I know they've been busy. Have they responded to you?
There was only one response, and it was sort of a short and sweet one. I think that right now, with the change in status of students from hybrid to full on or full remote, they're probably pretty busy.
Okay, I'm sure they can. Go ahead.
I expect that some of the things that they're doing right now to make that happen may give them more information to give us.
Okay. As we get closer to the, I haven't extended an invite yet to them, but as we get closer to that invite, I think it would be helpful, and thank you, Jody, for suggesting this, if we could formulate some questions of issues that we really, or items we'd like more information about, so that Amber and whoever else joins her come prepared.
So I have one that maybe I can share with Beth now, and Hank. But I remember when we went through the capital projects, I got a little stuck on the softball field after, a $700,000 spend on the sprinklers for the schools, and then to see another $200,000 spend on the softball fields. So I got a little stuck on that. So one of the questions that has occurred to me since is the athletic program has tons of revolving accounts, and I'm wondering why, field upkeep and maintenance doesn't come out of either the fundraising that was done, many millions of dollars to upgrade those facilities just a couple of years ago, and why it wasn't done then, and also why fundraising isn't an option now, and also why revolving accounts aren't used on that. And
especially with shortened seasons.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just those are questions that occurred to me. Those are 3 questions that occurred to me about the expenditure. And the other thing is, if it's a free cash expenditure in the capital projects line, that's why I'd like to see where the total spending impacts the ratios of free cash and the bottom line tax bill and all those other kinds of things.
Do you mind writing those down? Because I didn't get a full 3 questions out of it.
Sure. I'll send them. And just to, why wasn't it done? I mean, it's a moot question. Why wasn't it done when $3-4 million was spent on athletic fields a couple of years ago? Why isn't revolving fund money, they own revenue they generate in the athletic programs? Why isn't that used? I guess that was 2. And then the third is, how would spending the $200,000 now impact our ratio of free cash? Because if we have it, then there isn't that great of an excuse not to use it for this.
I also think, just to stay with that for a moment, the wording of the explanation of the article is a little misleading. It makes it appear that we are mandated to do this because of Title IX. Mm-hmm. Title IX allows for certain exceptions, and certainly the economic circumstances that we're faced with in these days would be an exception. Personally, I don't oppose doing what they plan. Mm-hmm. I just question the timing of it, that's all. Mm-hmm. So anyway, without getting into a debate about that tonight, I'm sure there'll be plenty of time for us to do that.
Okay.
Any other issues from any of the liaisons? Okay. Any public reminders?
Wear your masks and social distancing.
Okay. And
get your vaccination.
Get your vaccination, right. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think by mid-April, everybody over the age of 16 will be eligible.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Excellent. That'll make all us seniors more comfortable.
School students are a little queasy right now. Some of the students I work with, they were expressing hesitation about going back. It was sort of like, we can't be vaccinated.
Okay.
Interesting.
Anyway, okay. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Beth. Second.
Bradley, second.
Thank you, Alan. Andrew, sorry.
Or Andrew. Yeah.
All right. We are almost adjourned. We got to vote. Ms. Blumberg.
Blumberg, yes.
Ms. Board.
Board, yes.
Mr. Bradley.
Bradley, yes.
Ms. Hensley.
Hensley, yes.
Mr. Ugal.
Yes.
Mr. Leslie. You're
You're
muted,
muted.
Walter.
Yeah.
Yes?
My
Okay.
phone started ringing. Leslie, yes.
Okay. Mr. Siddiqui.
Siddiqui, yes.
Beretti, yes. Folks, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Cheers.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good week.
Yeah, Zafar, very nice to meet you. Nice to see you.
See you Monday.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks for coaching me through the screen sharing, guys.
Good job.
Yeah. Duh.
Michael,
Okay.
is it your own Zoom account or is it like you're on a school equivalent of a school Zoom account?
No, the town gave me a Zoom account.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
I-
because it looks a little bit different than my paid one.
yeah, I don't, well, yeah. I since I'm not teaching anymore, I'm avoiding Zoom and everything else like it.
Yeah, so anyway, if you, in your spare time, like I said, there's a way to go into Zoom and send like a chat invitation that has the link so that it's easy to start the Zoom, like if
Yeah.
people know to go.
Okay, let me take a look at that. And the guys at the IT department at the town hall will probably be helpful with that too.
Yeah, and it may just be that we just need, 3 hours before the meeting, we just need a reminder shot out because that's the easiest way to make sure everybody can find the link.
Got it.
You
Yeah,
know?
maybe I'm being too efficient, huh? Yeah.
One question.
Yes.
Who sends this Zoom invite?
I do.
Okay, because I didn't get it. So just 5 minutes before 7 o'clock, I wrote to John and he sent me the invite. So
Yeah, we know.
I was hoping.
You were copied, Zafar, on the email, so that's.
So have you been getting other emails from Michael? Because if there's a typo in your name on your email,
Yeah.
it could throw everything off. Have you gotten other emails from Michael?
Yes, I did. So we spoke last Saturday. We had a Zoom meeting and I got this article draft number. So I was reading through this on the other screen while I was in this meeting.
Yeah.
I don't know why it didn't come to you.
Check your spam folder.
Yeah,
Oh, let me
check your spam folder. Good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will, okay. Yeah.
All right. Thank you,
Yeah.
folks.
Thank you.
Okay,
Take
thanks.
care.
Good night now.